At 12:47 a.m., the building is already supposed to be empty. The lights along the executive floor are dimmed to their lowest setting, calibrated for security cameras rather than people. The air conditioning hums at night cycle strength, steady and indifferent. From the street below, the tower looks inactive, its glass reflecting only darkness and the occasional passing headlight. Inside, a locked executive office is opened without force. A federal compliance investigator inserts a keycard, pauses for the green light and steps aside. The door swings inward with practiced restraint. No one speaks. There is no need. This is not discovery. This is verification. The office is large. Carefully curated. Every object positioned to suggest control. Diplomas on the wall. Awards framed and angled for maximum authority. A desk that faces the city, as if the city itself were meant to listen. The investigators move in sequence. One approaches the desktop computer and disconnects the cables slowly, as though speed itself would be disrespectful. Another opens a drawer that has never been opened during business hours. Inside are external drives, labeled in a personal shorthand no one else was meant to read. Each is placed into an evidence bag. Each is sealed. Each is logged. A laptop is powered down, not abruptly, but properly. Files are not browsed. Screens are not scanned. This is not curiosity. It is procedure. A private phone is removed from a locked compartment. Its screen is dark. No missed calls. No notifications. Silence, even now. The framed leadership award on the desk is lifted and turned face down to make room for the evidence case. No one comments on it. No one needs to. In the corridor outside, the most powerful executive in the company waits. He stands straight, hands relaxed at his sides. His suit is immaculate, tailored for boardrooms and confidence. His expression is composed, but no longer rehearsed. He is not being restrained. He is not being accused. He is being escorted. Two agents stand beside him, not touching him, not needing to. There are no handcuffs. There is no announcement. There is no one to witness what is happening, and that is intentional. The doors to the office close softly. An elevator is called. It arrives almost immediately, as though it has been waiting. When the doors open, the executive steps inside without resistance. He does not ask questions. He does not protest. He understands, now, that the system he once commanded is no longer answering to him. The doors close. By morning, his access will be revoked. His name will be removed from internal directories. Meetings will be cancelled without explanation. The company will continue to function, quietly adjusting around the absence of a man who once filled every room he entered. There will be no statement issued tonight. There will be no crowd. There will only be silence and closed doors. 3 floors below, that silence settles differently. In a corner of the building most executives never visit, a single desk remains occupied. The overhead lights are off, but the glow from a computer screen cuts softly through the dark. It illuminates the hands of a man still working. He hears the elevator above him. He hears the faint echo of footsteps in the stairwell. He does not look up. He does not check his phone. He does not smile. His face remains unchanged, focused on the document in front of him. A spreadsheet. A report. Something unfinished, something precise. He scrolls, reviews a line, corrects a figure, and continues. If someone were watching him now, they would see nothing remarkable. He does not tense. He does not pause. He does not acknowledge the shift happening above him. When the document is complete, he saves it carefully. He reads it once more, not because he doubts it, but because accuracy matters. Then he closes the file and shuts down the computer. He stands, collects his jacket, and straightens a stack of papers on his desk that no one else has ever touched. The clock on the wall reads just past 1 in the morning. He leaves his desk exactly as he found it. As he walks toward the exit, he passes empty workstations belonging to people who will arrive in a few hours, unaware that the balance of power has already changed. He takes the stairs, not the elevator. He always takes the stairs. Outside, the night air is cool and quiet. The building behind him looks the same as it always has. What happened tonight was not sudden. It was not impulsive. It was not an act of defiance or rage. It was the final movement of something that had been prepared over time, assembled carefully by someone who understood that silence could be used not to surrender, but to observe. Long before investigators entered that office, someone had been watching. Long before authority collapsed, someone had been counting. And long before the system realized it was under threat, it had already been mapped, measured, and patiently dismantled by the one person it never considered dangerous. Daniel Mercer is not the kind of man people remember meeting. If asked later, most of his colleagues would struggle to describe him with any confidence. They might recall his name only after hesitation. They might say he was polite. Quiet. Always at his desk. Always on time. Nothing more. Nothing that suggested consequence. He is in his late 30s, though age has settled into him without emphasis. No sharp lines of ambition in his face. No visible hunger for recognition. His posture is upright but relaxed, as if effort has never been required to maintain control. When he moves, it is without urgency. Each step is measured. Each gesture deliberate. He does nothing quickly enough to draw attention, and nothing slowly enough to invite criticism. Daniel dresses as though he has learned the value of neutrality. Muted colors. Clean lines. Shoes chosen for durability rather than style. Jackets that blend into office corridors and conference rooms without ever demanding a second look. He never wears anything that might become a topic of conversation. No statements. No signals. His appearance offers no opinion. In meetings, he takes notes. He does not speak unless spoken to. When he does, his voice is even, almost forgettable. He does not interrupt. He does not challenge. He asks questions that sound procedural, not personal. The kind of questions people answer without defensiveness because they seem harmless. It is easy to assume he is replaceable. In an organization that values visibility over substance, Daniel appears to contribute very little that cannot be replicated. He does not manage large teams. He does not lead presentations. He does not attach his name to ambitious initiatives. If someone were to remove him from the organizational chart, it would seem, at first glance, that very little would change. That assumption is shared by nearly everyone. Daniel's background does nothing to contradict it. His education is solid but unremarkable. No elite institutions. No influential mentors. No academic prestige that would insulate him from being overlooked. He learned his craft quietly, through repetition rather than recognition. Through exposure rather than endorsement. Before joining the company, he worked as a public records analyst. Later, as an internal auditor. Roles that existed entirely within the margins of other people's decisions. Positions that required patience more than personality. Precision more than persuasion. In those roles, Daniel learned a language few people truly respect. The language of compliance. Not the version spoken in training seminars or printed in corporate handbooks, but the version that lives in footnotes, in exceptions, in conditional clauses that only activate under specific circumstances. He learned how policies are written to appear comprehensive while leaving room for discretion. He learned how financial trails fragment just enough to remain legal until they are examined in sequence. He learned where oversight ends and assumption begins. Daniel understands how systems protect themselves. How violations are diluted through process. How responsibility becomes abstract when distributed across enough signatures. He knows which reports trigger automatic reviews, and which disappear into archived folders no one opens again. He knows how procedural loopholes are not accidents, but design features. What separates Daniel from others with similar knowledge is not ambition. It is restraint. He possesses an exceptional patience that is often mistaken for passivity. When confronted with pressure, he does not respond emotionally. When dismissed, he does not correct the misunderstanding. When blamed, he does not defend himself publicly. He absorbs. Criticism passes through him without visible effect. Humiliation does not register on his face. Setbacks are catalogued internally, not reacted to. He listens more than he speaks, and remembers more than anyone realizes. Daniel has a memory for patterns. Not for isolated events, but for repetition. He notices when approvals follow the same names. When exceptions favor the same departments. When certain rules are enforced rigorously for some, and interpreted generously for others. He remembers dates. Language. The exact phrasing of emails that were later edited or deleted. He remembers which policies were cited, and which were quietly ignored. Over time, these fragments form structures in his mind. Structures others never see because they are too busy reacting to individual incidents. To Daniel, nothing exists in isolation. Everything is connected, eventually. And while those around him mistake his silence for compliance, and his restraint for fear, Daniel continues to observe. Continues to learn. Continues to prepare in ways that are invisible to anyone who believes power only announces itself loudly. By the time anyone begins to wonder who Daniel Mercer really is, they are already asking the question far too late. Power in this company does not announce itself with shouting. It arrives dressed in policy language, protected by legal review, and reinforced by silence. The man at the center of it is referred to internally as leadership, but that word is misleading. He is not simply a supervisor or an executive with a title. He is the system made visible. Authority condensed into a single office, a single signature, a single presence that alters behavior the moment it enters a room. His rank sits high enough to remove him from consequence. Decisions made in his name pass through layers of approval designed to validate, not question. His calendar is filled with meetings that never produce minutes. His directives arrive through intermediaries, framed as consensus. When outcomes are harmful, responsibility becomes abstract. He does not threaten openly. He does not need to. His power is understood. Outside the building, his name carries weight in places most employees will never see. Political donors recognize it. Regulatory bodies return his calls. Legal counsel is not reactive, but anticipatory. Every move is reviewed before it is visible. Every risk assessed before it is taken. By the time an action reaches the workforce, it has already been insulated from challenge. This insulation shapes the culture below him. Fear is not enforced through punishment alone, but through unpredictability. No one is ever quite certain which rule will be applied, or when. Policies exist in abundance, but their enforcement is selective. Those favored by leadership are described as high performers. Those who question are described as difficult. The workplace begins to adjust around this understanding. Restructuring becomes the preferred language of retaliation. Departments are reorganized without explanation. Roles are eliminated and recreated elsewhere under different names. Employees who raise concerns find their positions suddenly redundant. Officially, no one is targeted. Practically, everyone understands who has been marked. Favoritism is reframed as meritocracy. Promotions are justified through vague metrics that cannot be verified. Performance reviews reference criteria that shift from year to year. Opportunities circulate within a closed orbit of approval, reinforcing loyalty while maintaining plausible deniability. Complaints are never dismissed outright. They are processed. An employee who reports misconduct is thanked for their courage and guided into procedure. Forms are completed. Statements are recorded. Timelines are extended. The language remains respectful. The process moves slowly enough to exhaust urgency, then quietly resolves itself without resolution. Human resources does not function as protection. It functions as containment. Its role is not to challenge power, but to absorb pressure. To document dissatisfaction without allowing it to spread. To ensure that grievances remain individual rather than collective. To protect the institution by managing the emotions of those it disadvantages. Within this environment, consequences rarely arrive loudly. They arrive as absences. A colleague's desk is cleared over a weekend. An email address stops responding. A name disappears from distribution lists. Questions are discouraged through subtle reminders about professionalism and discretion. No explanation is offered. Careers end not with termination meetings, but with silence. Transfers occur without consultation. Responsibilities are reassigned without notice. Employees are left to interpret their own erasure. Those who adapt are rewarded. Silence becomes a currency. Compliance is mistaken for loyalty. Those who learn to look away are trusted with advancement. Those who speak carefully are allowed to remain. Resistance does not provoke confrontation. It provokes disappearance. Over time, the imbalance becomes structural. One man's authority shapes the futures of hundreds. His preferences become policy. His aversions become risk factors. The system bends to protect him, because it has been built to do so. And within that system, people like Daniel Mercer are not seen as threats. They do not demand meetings. They do not write impassioned emails. They do not gather allies. They do not challenge power directly. They survive quietly. Which is why the system never notices when someone like Daniel begins to understand it completely. Daniel does nothing that could be mistaken for resistance. When decisions are announced that make no sense, he does not ask why. When meetings end with conclusions that contradict the data presented, he does not correct the record. When colleagues whisper questions in hallways and break rooms, he listens without responding, his face revealing nothing that might invite confidence or concern. He observes. Observation, for Daniel, is not passive. It is methodical. He notices who speaks first in meetings and who speaks last. He notices which objections are acknowledged and which are ignored. He notices how language shifts when certain names are mentioned, how pauses appear where accountability should be. He does not protest. Protest would require visibility. Visibility would invite attention. Attention would shorten the timeline before the system closed around him. He does not warn others. Warnings spread unpredictably. They create noise. Noise invites containment. Daniel understands that silence, carefully maintained, preserves access. As long as he remains unthreatening, he remains present. As long as he remains present, he can see. Privately, he documents. Not on company servers. Not in shared folders. In places meant for personal reference. Dates are recorded without commentary. Approvals are noted without interpretation. Signatures are captured exactly as they appear, including revisions that suggest hesitation or afterthought. He tracks changes. A report approved at 9:12 a.m. revised at 9:47. A compliance note added, then removed. A policy citation altered slightly to change its scope. None of these moments would mean anything on their own. Daniel knows that. He records them anyway. Patterns do not reveal themselves all at once. They require accumulation. Daniel endures what follows. Performance feedback sessions become public in tone, though framed as professional development. Criticism is delivered calmly, in front of others, with language that suggests concern rather than judgment. He is described as needing alignment, as lacking initiative, as not fully integrating into leadership vision. He accepts the feedback without reaction. His responsibilities are reduced without explanation. Projects he has spent months refining are reassigned days before completion. He is asked to transfer knowledge to colleagues who were not present during the work. The handover is described as collaboration. He complies. He does not ask why his name is no longer attached to outcomes he produced. He does not challenge the reassignment. He does not correct the narrative when credit is redistributed upward. Each incident is registered internally, then set aside. This endurance is not resignation. It is preservation. During this period, Daniel begins to study the system deliberately. Not emotionally. Not ideologically. As a structure. He revisits internal audit reports, not for conclusions, but for phrasing. He studies how findings are softened through language. How terms like potential risk and procedural variance replace words that would demand action. He notes how severity is graded, and how those grades determine whether a report travels upward or disappears sideways. He studies compliance language as though it were a dialect. He learns which violations require mandatory escalation and which allow discretionary handling. He memorizes reporting thresholds, dollar amounts, time frames, jurisdictional triggers. He learns how misconduct can be fragmented across departments until it falls below every individual threshold while remaining significant in total. He learns how policy is used to hide activity rather than prevent it. Misconduct becomes invisible not because it is rare, but because it is formatted correctly. Spread thin. Justified procedurally. Approved incrementally. Daniel traces these mechanisms without inserting himself into them. He becomes fluent in the system's logic. By the end of this phase, Daniel understands something others never grasp. The system does not fail accidentally. It fails consistently, in predictable ways, that favor those who already hold power. And because he has remained silent, because he has endured without reaction, because he has studied without interruption, Daniel now sees the structure clearly enough to know exactly where it cannot protect itself. The shift does not happen suddenly. It begins with a subtle tightening of space around Daniel, as though the room he has been working in for years has grown smaller without warning. Conversations that once included him now continue without pause when he enters. Decisions that once required his input are finalized before he is informed. Nothing is stated openly. Everything is implied. The first direct signal arrives disguised as routine. Daniel's annual review, completed months earlier, is quietly reopened. Language is adjusted. Scores are recalibrated. Comments that once described consistency and reliability are softened into neutrality, then edged toward concern. The changes are dated retroactively, as if they had always existed in this form. A promotion he was told to expect never materializes. There is no rejection email. No explanation offered. The position simply disappears from the internal portal, then reappears weeks later with a different title and a different name attached to it. Daniel is informed after the fact, in a brief meeting framed as an update rather than a decision. His career does not end. It stalls. Opportunities flatten. Advancement becomes conditional on qualities no one defines. His role remains intact, but its future is sealed quietly. He is still employed, still productive, but no longer moving. This is the warning. The second phase follows quickly. Daniel is reassigned to a different team without consultation. Officially, the move is described as a realignment of resources. Unofficially, it removes him from institutional memory. Colleagues he has worked alongside for years are replaced with new faces who know nothing of his past contributions and have no reason to trust him. He is no longer copied on certain communications. System permissions he has held for years are revoked under the justification of role clarification. Access to databases he once maintained is restricted. Requests for reinstatement are acknowledged, then deferred. No denial is issued. The silence itself becomes the answer. Isolation settles in. Daniel's work becomes smaller in scope, narrower in influence. He is still accountable, but no longer informed. Still responsible, but no longer empowered. The separation is clean enough to appear procedural, but thorough enough to limit his reach. This is containment. Then the final escalation arrives. A formal complaint is filed. The language is precise. Controlled. Professional. Daniel is accused not of misconduct, but of failure. Insubordination framed as lack of alignment. Incompetence framed as inability to adapt. The accusations are supported by selectively edited documentation, performance metrics stripped of context, and testimonies that rely on interpretation rather than fact. A meeting is scheduled. Human resources is present. Legal counsel is present. Daniel is offered the opportunity to respond, but the structure of the meeting makes clear that the conclusion has already been drafted. His explanation is acknowledged, then summarized inaccurately. His statements are noted, then reframed. Termination is not mentioned directly. It does not need to be. The language used is preparatory. Corrective action. Performance improvement. Final evaluation period. Daniel recognizes the architecture of the process. He has studied it too closely not to. This is the final narrowing of the corridor. He understands now that the system has identified him not as a dissident, but as a variable. Something unaccounted for. Something that no longer fits cleanly within its protections. The pressure is no longer abstract. It is personal. Daniel does not react visibly. He listens. He asks for copies of documents. He requests timelines. His demeanor remains unchanged. To those across the table, he appears resigned. But internally, something shifts. He understands that the margin for patience has closed. That silence, while still necessary, can no longer be indefinite. The mechanisms he has observed are now being used against him with intent. The window is closing. Whatever has been preserved through restraint must now be acted upon with precision. Not impulsively. Not emotionally. But deliberately. Because the system has made its final move. And Daniel knows exactly how little time he has left before he is erased completely. The moment does not arrive with drama. It arrives quietly, buried inside a routine document that was never meant to be read closely. Daniel encounters it late in the afternoon, during a review task assigned to him as a formality rather than a necessity. The work is narrow now. Constrained. He is given fragments, not context. Pieces, not authority. The assignment is framed as cleanup. Verification. A courtesy before final submission. He opens the file without expectation. At first, nothing appears unusual. The formatting is familiar. The language consistent with prior drafts. The tone carefully neutral, engineered to sound compliant without being precise. Daniel reads it once, then again, more slowly. He scrolls back. He compares it to a version he remembers, not because he kept a copy, but because the structure is wrong. Something has shifted. A paragraph has been altered too carelessly. The change is subtle, but decisive. A clause has been repositioned in a way that transfers responsibility without acknowledging the transfer. A procedural safeguard has been rewritten as discretionary guidance. On its own, the modification might escape notice. But in context, it does something dangerous. It creates cover. Daniel follows the trail. He checks the metadata. The revision timestamp does not align with the approval sequence. The author listed is someone who should not have had access at that stage. The digital signature attached to the document belongs to an executive who was not present for the review it claims to certify. A signature that should not exist. Daniel does not rush. He opens related files. He traces the approval chain backward. He identifies the moment where oversight was assumed rather than documented. The moment where trust replaced verification. What emerges is not a mistake. It is a construction. The document is designed to retroactively legitimize a decision already made. A decision that violates internal compliance thresholds. A decision that moves funds across boundaries that require mandatory reporting. A decision that has been disguised through language precise enough to pass casual review, but fragile under scrutiny. This violation cannot be concealed. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is structural. It crosses too many jurisdictions. Activates too many automatic controls. Once flagged, it cannot be contained internally. It cannot be reframed. It cannot be resolved quietly. Daniel sits with the document open on his screen for several minutes. He does not feel satisfaction. He does not feel anger. What he feels is clarity. This is the line. Not the one drawn by policy, but the one drawn by consequence. Everything he has observed, endured, and recorded leads here. The system has moved too fast. Too confidently. It has assumed invisibility where none exists. Daniel understands something essential in this moment. Restraint has served its purpose. Silence has preserved access, but access without action is no longer protection. To remain silent now would not be caution. It would be complicity. The system has crossed a boundary that cannot be ignored without becoming part of it. Daniel does not act impulsively. He does not confront anyone. He does not send emails. He does not ask questions that would signal discovery. He closes the document and logs the access quietly, exactly as procedure requires. Then he begins to assemble. Evidence is gathered methodically. Versions are compared. Metadata is preserved. Approval paths are documented. He aligns timelines with reporting thresholds. He verifies jurisdictional triggers. He ensures that every element required for external review exists independently of internal narrative. Nothing is left to interpretation. Nothing is assumed. When Daniel prepares the disclosure, it is not framed as accusation. It is framed as compliance. The language is neutral. Factual. Devoid of emotion. He does not describe intent. He describes sequence. He does not allege wrongdoing. He identifies violations. The difference matters. By the time he finishes, the record is complete. This is not a reaction. It is a conclusion. Daniel pauses before submitting. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. He understands that once silence ends, it cannot be restored. That this action will not elevate him, protect him, or vindicate him publicly. It will simply trigger consequence. He submits the report. When the confirmation appears on his screen, it is brief. Automated. Unremarkable. Daniel closes his laptop. The room around him is unchanged. The building continues to function. People pass in hallways unaware that the balance has shifted. Nothing has exploded. Nothing has collapsed. But the system has been engaged. And silence, having served its purpose, has finally ended. The action that follows is quiet. There are no speeches. No warnings. No messages sent in frustration or desperation. What Daniel initiates is not exposure in the theatrical sense. It is activation. The disclosures move through the channels exactly as designed. Internally, they are submitted through compliance systems that do not respond to emotion, hierarchy, or reputation. The language is technical, procedural, deliberately unadorned. Each submission is complete on its own, requiring no interpretation, no supplementary explanation. Dates align. Documentation matches. Jurisdictional thresholds are crossed cleanly. Externally, regulators receive parallel reports, formatted according to statute, not narrative. The disclosures are anonymous, not because Daniel fears retaliation, but because anonymity preserves focus. The system cannot argue with a person it cannot see. It must answer the evidence instead. There are no leaks. No journalist receives a tip. No rumor circulates through industry channels. No one inside the company is alerted prematurely. The absence of publicity is intentional. Public accusation would invite counter-narratives, denials, delays. This process does not need attention. It needs inevitability. Once submitted, the system responds without discretion. Internal compliance flags activate automatically. Risk thresholds are exceeded. Independent audit provisions embedded deep within governance frameworks are triggered, not by human decision, but by algorithmic rule. Notifications are sent to departments that do not coordinate socially, only procedurally. No one can intercept them. Access permissions are locked down. Databases enter read-only mode. Financial systems freeze pending review. Transactional authority is suspended under clauses rarely invoked, but always present. The company continues to operate, but under constraint. Meetings are cancelled without explanation. Calendars are cleared by force of policy. Legal counsel shifts from advisory to defensive posture. Communication becomes cautious, formal, scripted. The chain reaction does not spread outward. It collapses inward. By the time senior leadership becomes aware that something has changed, the options available to them have already narrowed. Every attempt to restore control runs into automated safeguards designed to prevent exactly that. This is not chaos. It is containment working in reverse. The executive at the center of it feels the shift before it is explained. Approvals he once granted without question now require review. Requests he once made by habit are returned with delays. His authority encounters resistance not from people, but from systems that no longer recognize his override. There is no confrontation. No meeting where accusations are raised. No hallway exchange. No raised voices. He is informed, formally, that an independent review has been initiated. He is advised, carefully, that certain decisions are under examination. He is reminded, politely, of obligations he once enforced on others. The language is respectful. It is also final. The authority he relied on dissolves not through rebellion, but through procedure. The same policies that shielded him now restrain him. The same compliance frameworks he approved now dictate his limits. His access is reduced incrementally. Not revoked all at once, but narrowed. Then narrowed again. Each restriction justified. Each step documented. There is no moment he can point to as injustice. No single decision to challenge. Only accumulation. The system applies itself upward for the first time. When investigators arrive, they do not confront him as a villain. They approach him as a subject of review. Their questions are specific. Their interest precise. They do not ask why. They ask when, how, and under what authority. The man who once controlled outcomes now responds to them. And because this process was designed without spectacle, there is no collapse to witness. No dramatic fall. No vindication offered to those harmed along the way. There is only removal. Quiet. Procedural. Complete. The rules, having been invoked correctly, do what they were always meant to do. The aftermath does not arrive with relief. It arrives with adjustment. In the days that follow, the building feels the same from the outside, but inside, something has shifted direction. Conversations lower in volume. Doors close more carefully. Emails are written with an unfamiliar precision. Words that were once casual are now measured. Assumptions are replaced with verification. Fear has not disappeared. It has moved. Where it once flowed downward, settling on those with the least authority, it now travels upward, collecting quietly around offices that were previously insulated. Leadership meetings stretch longer. Legal counsel is present more often. Decisions are delayed not out of caution, but out of awareness. Silence now belongs to those who once enforced it. Executives who spoke freely now choose their words carefully. Instructions are issued in writing. Verbal directives are avoided. Power is still present, but it is no longer effortless. It must justify itself. It must document itself. The culture responds instinctively. Employees notice without being told. They see calendars cleared. They see titles removed from email signatures. They see familiar names disappear from decision chains. No announcement explains these changes. None is needed. The system communicates through absence. What was once invisible is now watched. The consequences extend beyond a single office. Independent reviews widen their scope as a matter of protocol, not suspicion. Other departments fall within the radius of inquiry simply because they are connected. Transactions once considered settled are re-examined. Approvals once assumed valid are verified retroactively. Other executives are implicated not because they are identical, but because proximity carries consequence. Some are found careless. Others complicit. Most are revealed to have benefited quietly from a structure that rewarded alignment over scrutiny. Policies begin to change. Not in dramatic rewrites, but in careful revisions. Language is tightened. Discretion is narrowed. Oversight mechanisms are adjusted to activate sooner, escalate faster. Clauses once buried are moved forward. Safeguards once optional are made mandatory. The organization does not announce reform. It absorbs it. Careers are rerouted without explanation. Some leaders accept roles elsewhere. Others step into advisory positions that carry prestige but little influence. A few depart quietly, their exits framed as personal decisions. The narrative remains controlled, but the outcome is unmistakable. The system has corrected itself in public silence. And within this recalibrated environment, Daniel Mercer remains exactly where he is. There is no promotion. No acknowledgement. No meeting where his role is praised or his contribution recognized. His name is not mentioned in connection with what occurred. It never will be. The process does not reward the individual who triggers it. It only resolves the violation. Daniel returns to work. His access remains unchanged. His responsibilities stabilize. The pressure that once closed around him dissipates, not replaced by opportunity, but by distance. No one assigns him high-visibility projects. No one includes him in strategic discussions. They leave him alone. This is not punishment. It is recognition of a different kind. The system has learned where he stands, even if it does not understand him. He is no longer underestimated, but he is also no longer convenient to engage. He exists outside the usual incentives. Beyond easy categorization. Daniel does not seek acknowledgement. He does not need vindication. He has achieved something quieter and more enduring. He has restored equilibrium without inserting himself into its center. He has proven that influence does not require position, and that consequence does not require confrontation. The workplace continues. But it does so with an awareness that did not exist before. And Daniel Mercer, unnoticed and uncelebrated, walks its corridors untouched, having done exactly what he set out to do. Power rarely looks the way people expect it to. It is often mistaken for visibility, for volume, for the ability to command attention on demand. It is confused with authority, with titles printed on glass doors, with access to rooms others never enter. But those are surfaces. They are signals, not substance. The deeper truth is that power lives inside systems. Systems protect themselves by design. They are built to absorb pressure, deflect blame, and distribute responsibility until no single point appears accountable. When used casually, they reward those who already understand their language. When used aggressively, they close ranks and erase disruption. For a long time, that protection works. It works because most challenges arrive in the wrong form. Too loud. Too personal. Too emotional. Noise invites destruction. It signals threat before it establishes proof. It gives the system time to prepare its defenses, to rewrite narratives, to isolate the source of disturbance. Precision works differently. Precision does not announce itself. It aligns with the rules as they exist, not as they are promised. It understands thresholds, sequences, dependencies. It knows when action becomes unavoidable, not because of outrage, but because of structure. When systems are used correctly, they do not resist. They comply. This is the part few people learn. That systems are not defeated by confrontation, but by accuracy. Not by exposure, but by inevitability. Not by force, but by patience applied at the exact point where denial is no longer possible. Silence is often misread in these moments. It is assumed to be submission. Fear. Inaction. But silence, when chosen deliberately, can be something else entirely. It can be the space in which understanding forms. The interval in which patterns reveal themselves. The margin that allows preparation without interference. Silence is not absence. It is accumulation. What happened here did not require courage in the traditional sense. It required restraint. The kind of restraint that allows injustice to fully articulate itself. The kind that waits until responsibility can no longer be fragmented or transferred. The kind that understands that timing matters more than intent. Justice, in this form, does not feel triumphant. There is no moment of celebration. No clear resolution. Those affected do not receive apologies. Those responsible are not publicly condemned. The outcome is incomplete in ways that matter to those who suffered quietly along the way. And yet, something irreversible has occurred. The system has been forced to recognize itself. It has applied its rules upward. It has confronted behavior it once normalized. It has adjusted not because it was shamed, but because it was obligated. This kind of justice leaves no monument. It does not announce its arrival. It does not offer closure. It simply changes the terrain, making certain behaviors more difficult, certain abuses more visible, certain assumptions no longer safe. And it leaves behind questions rather than answers. About how often silence is mistaken for weakness. About how many people move through systems unseen, gathering understanding while others gather influence. About how many injustices persist not because they are unknown, but because they are challenged incorrectly. In the end, what remains is not a lesson, but a recognition. That power does not always fall. Sometimes it is redirected. Sometimes it is constrained. Sometimes it is made to answer quietly, without spectacle, without applause. And in those moments, justice does not arrive as a declaration. It arrives as a correction. Subtle. Procedural. Permanent. Leaving nothing untouched, even if no one ever speaks its name.